Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, this surely has been a year, and it's truly a time of year for us to be thankful for what we have, and especially when that's each other and our families. And I am truly thankful this year, especially for my wife, Shelly, as I will get into here shortly in part one of our Cancer Christmas special. So, before we start the Cancer Christmas special part one episode, I do want to remind everyone that I'm not a doctor, so nothing I say should be construed as medical advice. And second, we're going to be talking about prostate cancer. So if that makes you feel uncomfortable, just know what you're getting into. Okay, so we just returned from our trip to Houston Methodist. That's where my GU oncologist practices. This is my second trip to Houston Methodist. During this trip, we were going to accomplish a couple of things. It was a 2-day trip. We flew in on Monday afternoon, and then Tuesday was going to be a battery of tests, and then Wednesday we'll meet with the doctor. And in part two of the Cancer Christmas special, I'll talk about those results. So the tests. On Tuesday, I was to do a battery of blood work as well as doing a PSMA PET and finishing it all off with a full body MRI. Excuse me. So we flew into, so before this, when I scheduled all of my appointments back in October, I made sure to let both of the departments know where I was getting the tests that I'd be flying in. So I asked specifically for any type of preparation that needed to be done. And I was told by both departments, or all three departments, that nothing needed to be done. No fasting, no extracurricular, things that might need to be accomplished. Well, as soon as we landed in Houston, things started to go sideways. And this is where, I kind of talk about how thankful I was for things this year, and especially number one on that list being Shelly, my wife. She was able to help keep me from falling apart, as she usually does. So we're sitting having dinner at 7 o'clock at night after we had flown in, and we're booked at a hotel within walking distance to the hospital, but there's not a lot around the hospital itself. And I get a call at 7 o'clock at night from the MRI department, and they just wanted to confirm that I was in town and that I was ready for the MRI. And they said, "Hey, did we let you know what we wanted you to do?" And I said, "Yeah, you told me nothing was required." And they said, "Oh, no, we're going to change that. We want you to fast for 4 hours, and we want you to do a fleet enema." So, and of course, again, I start getting frustrated because, all right, the fasting, not a big deal. The MRI was going to be the second thing we did. I can go, half a day without eating. With the androgen deprivation therapy, I've put on enough weight to where not eating for half a day isn't going to do me any harm. But then having to go and do this and figure out how I'm going to fit this in, going to the hospital, and then coming back, doing the procedure. But, where am I going to find the products to be able to do, the enema? And again, that's where Shelly stepped in, had me step back, take a breath, and just reminded me, hey, anything that's going to go wrong during this visit is going to go wrong. And the quicker that I accept that is going to be all the more easy this trip would be. So, and she was right. Anyway, we were able to get the products. So the next day, the sequence of events were supposed to go like this. I was supposed to show up, check in from both of my imaging appointments, then go to the lab, do the blood work, then go do my imaging appointments, and that was going to be it. Well, of course, do the first imaging appointment, go back to the hotel, spend some quality time with the wife and the products that I bought, and then go back to the hospital for the second imaging appointment. So we show up there about 7 o'clock. My first appointment's at 8:40. We check in, and that should be plenty enough time for me to get the lab done. So I go up to the lab. It's about 7:30. The desk doesn't get manned until 7:45. It was finally manned. I go up, say, hey, I'm here to do blood work. They're like, yes, I've got you here on the schedule, but the lab doesn't open until 9. So, okay, obstacle number 2. I'm starting to get frustrated again. Luckily, though, I've got a great GU oncologist. I actually have her actual personal cell number. I was able to text her while we're at the lab because what I was concerned about was that after I had the radioactive isotope necessary for the PSMA PET, that I wasn't going to be able to give blood for a certain amount of time. But I did confirm it with the doc. She said it was fine, so crisis averted. So I left, went and did the PSMA PET. This PSMA PET was done with gallium-68, which is a different isotope than what they used in Pensacola for the previous 2 PSMA PETs that I had. The PSMA PET pretty much went off without a hitch. I was able to talk the tech into leaving the IV in my arm because I knew that I was going to be getting stuck a lot, and I really only have one good vein. And that good vein is in my right arm, and every tech, no matter how good they are, that's what they use. And it's usually, one shot deal. You hit the vein, you're good to go. So I had to move the IV in, and then it was time for me to go try to get my labs done before I had to go back. We had to go back to the hotel, do our thing there, and then come back for the whole body MRI. So went inside the lab, and the lab technician here, by the way, is probably the best lab technician I've ever had draw blood. And I walk in, and I'm not even able to get the word out or the sentence out as I'm trying to tell her, hey, I've got an IV if that's easier. And she's already telling me, nope, I can't use that. I need fresh blood. I don't know really what that means, but anyway, again, with the foreshadowing, remember, I only have one good vein. So she's like, let me see your left arm. And I told her, I said, look, I've only got one good vein, but I know you're good. So see what you can do. So she's looking at my left arm. She's tying that tourniquet. She's tying it as tight as she can. I think the arm's about to fall off. She's beating my elbow, trying to get a vein to pop, and it's just not popping. So then she looks at my right hand, and I think you could kind of tell what happened there. So that was this wasn't fun right here. This was not fun. So she sticks the needle in, and as soon as she stuck it in, she's like, nope. So instead of taking it out and sticking me again, she just starts rummaging around in there. And, every time I'm like, nope, and then nope. And I'm just sitting there, I'd like to say, calm as a clam, just enjoying my time in Houston. But it was a tad uncomfortable. So she eventually, after due diligence, making sure that I had no vein available in the hand, God bless her. She takes it out, and this time she just says, all right, I'm going to try pull out all the stops. So she ties that tourniquet on. I think there's some vice grips involved, on the wrist here. And then she opens up a heating pack, and she has the heating pack on here, trying to get the blood thin so a vein will pop. She's got me, squeezing the hand. I think I had one of those hand squeezers for strength. Again, just trying to get something to pop. She gets it in. She's quiet. And then she's like, okay, I got something. It's dripping. It's not coming very fast. And it didn't, because I was there quite a bit for all the vials that I needed to have filled. But even though it stopped a few times, we were able to successfully get that done. So all in all, not bad, but just with everything else, I mean, I'm already stressed because I don't know what these tests are going to show. And I've already had all the other things happen, and we've still got to go back, and play, let me play human dartboard at the hotel room. So it just was, yeah, I'm whining a little bit, but it was a little bit of a frustrating time. So we go back to the hotel room, we do our thing there, and then we come back for the whole body MRI. I'd never had a whole body MRI. I've had MRI. I've had MRIs with contrast. I've had um, different MRIs that have lasted maybe 20 minutes when I was getting my labrum scanned. I I don't like full body MRIs, and I hope to never have to do one again. So just to kind of give an example of what I went through at the full body MRI, in addition to the fasting, in addition to the enema, um, as soon as I got in, they laid me on the table and they tied my feet together with a Velcro strap. They put a cushion underneath my knees, and then they put a swaddling cloth basically over me and swaddled me as though I were about to go into a sarcophagus, which in a way I was going inside that donut. And they do it to where you can't move because you're going to have to lay still for a prolonged period of time. Before I went in, they went over the procedure with me, and they told me it was going to be me lying still for about an hour and a half or so, hour and 45 minutes. It ended up being over 2 hours. And the swaddling wasn't the last thing that they did. Next thing they did was they put my head inside of a foam to keep the head from moving. Came up to about my cheekbones, and then they shoved foam shims into each side to keep the head very, very still, with earplugs in the ear, of course, because it's going to be very loud. Then they took these weighted plates, and the plates are weighted because they have cameras inside them, but there was a weighted plate placed beneath my knees, a weighted plate on my thighs, then my abdomen, and then my chest. Now, I don't think any of the plates weighed more than 10 pounds. They probably weighed somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds. But then these plates were strapped down onto the table itself so they could communicate with the control room. And then the final thing they did was they put a cage over my head, and at the top of the cage or right above the eyes was this prism that was very disorienting, that looked to my feet and the control room that was just beyond. After that, it was Dance Party USA, basically. The noise of the MRI, which if you've ever had one, you know how loud it is. Even with the foam shims, even with the earplugs, it still was just very loud for a very prolonged period of time. It was its own form of torture. And then, of course, just with the weights laying on top of you for a prolonged period of time, it's almost like those torture things they would tell you about, where they just one drop of water every 3 seconds, in the same place over and over and over and over again. Well, having that weight on your chest and everything else, after a while, it becomes a little bit more difficult to breathe. So anyway, at about the hour and a half point, they stopped the noise, and then they said, hey, okay, we're going to inject you now with some glycogen, and this glycogen could make you nauseous because it's just sugar, basically. And so they injected me with it, and it did make me nauseous. So on top of everything else, not being able to move in a very enclosed space, a lot of loud noise, disorientation of the prism, now I'm nauseous. And I'm like, I'm not a claustrophobic person, but there were a couple of points where I really didn't think that I was going to be able to make it. And I'm sure that I'm making this out to be a lot worse than it was. But that lasted for about another 20 minutes. Then they stopped the noise again, and they injected me with a contrast, which of course then usually it'll make me feel warm in the groin area, make you feel like you have to pee. But in this one, it just made my whole side where the IV was kind of feel frozen. But that too passed, and I was done. So it wasn't the greatest experience, but all in all, I've had worse. The prostate biopsy was certainly worse, which you also have to do a fleet enema before the prostate biopsy. So I'm getting pretty good at those. Shelly's getting pretty good at those, actually. Very steady hand, very steady, soft hands. So anyway, got it done. So the next day we go back for our results, and this video is already 15 minutes long, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there just so we've got something to talk about in the Cancer Christmas Special episode 2. So until then, Merry Christmas, everyone, and just trust me, if I can make it through that ordeal for the Tuesday battery of tests, then surely anything is possible.